Even if you have no interest in technology or automobiles, I'm guessing you've heard of Elon Musk. And there's a reason for that. Not only is Musk a billionaire, he is at the moment, on some estimates, the world's richest man. But it's a bit more than that. Musk is a guy who enjoys being rich. He's a guy who enjoys being famous. Unlike many rich people who want to talk about good work, like say Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, who talks about wanting to unite the world, under his control, of course, Musk just enjoys being Musk. So if you follow Musk on Twitter, and more about Musk and Twitter in a second, you will see the kind of things he tweets. He tweeted, for instance, should I buy Coca-Cola? Or if I buy Coca-Cola, I'll put the Coke back into the Coca-Cola, referring to the very early days of Coca-Cola when there was, in fact, cocaine. He enjoys that. He enjoys the uproar. He enjoys the fights. So when a man like Musk buys Twitter, people are bound to stand up and pay attention. And it's a bit more than that. In America, at least, there's been a huge controversy about what Musk will do to Twitter. Much of this has to do with the things Musk has been saying. For a start, he has a sort of absolute view of free speech. He believes that free speech should not be restricted as much as possible. This sounds great in theory, but what do you do about the liars, the bullies, the people who spread fake news, the people who abuse? It's not clear what Musk will do about that, and that's some of the criticism. Some of the criticism in America is also that he's certain to let Donald Trump back onto Twitter. This may or may not happen, but it's bad news for Trump, who has a Twitter rival going. And if Twitter goes conservative, as Musk will probably make it, then that's bad news for Trump's own platform. So these debates go on and on. There's also a debate about Musk's own personality. Can you trust a person who is so inconsistent, so publicity hungry? Is he going to be responsible enough to run Twitter? Now, I have no strong views on any of this. Partly, I think this is because I don't have a very high view of how Twitter is run at the moment. Twitter is supposed to stop people from using hate speech, stop people from telling lies. None of that really happens. If you go on to Indian Twitter, you'll find that the bullies are still there, the abuse is still there, the communal abuse is still there. Periodically, they block people, but even that doesn't seem to follow any kind of logic. They block people for the wrong things. People who say the worst possible things continue to be on Twitter. There's this whole problem about numbers. If you're on Twitter, you've probably heard everybody from Amitabh Bachchan downwards complaining about their follower accounts, how they haven't gone up, how they've gone down. And Twitter has never really explained why that happens. So no, I'm not a great admirer of Twitter. However, according to Elon Musk, he's going to stop bots on Twitter. This is a claim that's made by Indian Twitter as well. And assuming, for the purpose of argument, they can do it, I'm not sure it's going to be very effective, because the problem on Twitter is only partly the bots. The real problem is the 2 rupee wallahs. These are guys, hundreds, thousands of them, who can be hired by anyone for the payment of a small sum, sometimes 2 rupees, sometimes a bit more, and they will tweet what you like. They will tweet abuse, they will tweet criticism, or if you want, they'll tweet praise. How do you stop the 2 rupee wallahs? The essential basis of any kind of censorship of this sort is that there's a goodwill among people. But if there is no goodwill, if people come on the system to exploit it and to make money from it, how are you ever going to control it? I think that's one of the bigger problems with Twitter, and that's not a problem anyone can do anything about. So will Trump really make that much of a difference? People say, yeah, of course he will. He'll make it more conservative. He'll use it to promote his commercial interests. He'll make it more pro-government. Yeah, well, maybe he will. But I don't really see it going back to what it was. There was a time when Twitter was a forum when individuals exchanged ideas, exchanged views. It's not that any longer. You go on Twitter, you go on to the trending crowd. Everything on the trending list is always something that's been promoted or paid for. It's a movie that's being promoted, a song that's being promoted, or a political agenda that's being promoted. All of this is done with bots, with paid tweeters and people like that. So can he make that much difference? I don't think so. It may not get better, but it really can't get much worse. There is another aspect, though, to the Musk takeover, which I think is worrying. We are all of us, you, me, all of us, fascinated by tech billionaires. And tech billionaires now rule the world in a way that robber barons did at the beginning of the 20th century. These are rich people who are so rich they control everything. So is media or are media going to be no more than toys, no more than playthings for these tech barons? It's beginning to seem that way because Musk has not really come onto Twitter to make money. He's come on to promote Musk. So should something that is a medium for mass conversation become a plaything of a billionaire? Plus, these billionaires don't like each other. Musk is fighting with Bill Gates. Jeff Bezos has criticized Musk. Some kind of conflict with Mark Zuckerberg seems inevitable. So are we already, all of us who go on to Twitter and to other social media, are we no more than playthings for these guys? Think about that, because I think that's worrying. So that's one set of issues about Elon Musk himself. But then there are issues to do with the importance of Twitter. People who are in the media regard Twitter as being extremely important. We get fooled into fighting with each other. We look at these sock puppets. We worry about the bots. We think these are real people. In fact, Twitter is a very unreal place. Much of it is manipulated. And it's not even a very influential place. There are about 25 million Indians on Twitter. If you think that's a lot, think again. Japan, which is a much smaller country than ours, has 80 plus million. And think of all the other platforms that are in this country. I'm trying to do this from memory, but as far as I know, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp are between 350 to 490 million people. So you've got what? The very minimum 350 million versus the 25 million of Twitter. Does it really make a difference? I have always maintained it makes no difference. It's an interesting echo chamber. You can enjoy yourself, but never kid yourself into believing that Twitter matters. And yet we do. Journalists do. The people who don't are politicians. Speak to anybody in the BJP who's handled their campaigns, and they'll tell you the truth. From the time Narendra Modi's people started taking over social media and started building up his personality, they ignored Twitter. Twitter was there to bully people, maybe create a few bogus trends. The real clout in those days was in Facebook, because Facebook reached so many more people and reached people in every corner of the country. So what Modi's people did was they created Facebook groups in regional languages. And it was on these groups that they promoted Modi, they ran down Manmohan Singh, they abused Sonia Gandhi, they turned Rahul Gandhi into a joke. And you can tell, because people still believe those things, how influential that was. These days, politicians and people who try and wield influence don't worry about Twitter, because they've come to another important conclusion. We believe as journalists that if we get into an argument or we say things on Twitter, we will change people's minds. That's not how it works. People like to make up their own mind. They like to see the facts. They like to weigh what they think are the facts and then decide what their views are. They're not interested in your opinion or my opinion. But how do you give them those facts? We know that the mainstream media is in decline. Most people don't read newspapers. They don't believe what's on television. So they get their news from their phones, and they get it from Facebook, they get it from WhatsApp. If you can get control of WhatsApp, if you can get control of Facebook, and if you can spread so-called news over there that has no basis in reality, then you allow people to think that they are making up their own minds on the basis of news, never once realizing that the news that they're believing is fake. It's been made up to allow them to reach a certain conclusion. This is not restricted to India. It started in America, where the people who supported Trump and the conservative right invented things like alternative facts and the beginning of a post-truth era, which is there is no such thing in that world as the objective truth. Truth is what you want it to be. And that really is how the BJP, how every political party that wants to influence people, AAP for instance, works in India. It sends you facts, it sends you news on WhatsApp, on Facebook. You look at that news, and maybe if you're a skeptical person, you don't believe it. But millions of people believe it. WhatsApp has been responsible for so many riots. It's helped in engineering waves at elections. It's what people think constitutes the truth. So anything they read on WhatsApp, and if they read it day after day after day, that comes to be the narrative. That comes to be what they think the objective truth is. So that's where the power really is. That's why Mark Zuckerberg is so important. If you remember when there was an attack on Facebook in India because it appeared to have distinct BJP sympathies, the first people to rush to its defense were the BJP's IT cell because they know that's what matters. So when we talk about, oh, Twitter is going to be more negative, or there are going to be bullies on Twitter, nobody really cares, not with 25 million. It's the 490 million on YouTube, which is used much more, Instagram, WhatsApp put together, that really make the difference. And yet we don't see that because we're journalists and we live in our little echo chamber and we like reading each other's articles. We click on links, as hopefully you will on this one. But we don't realize that doesn't make much difference. The real influence is somewhere else. So when we get excited about Elon Musk, we get excited about what's going to happen on Twitter, it's fun, but it's a distraction. The real power is elsewhere. Never ever be fooled into thinking that Elon Musk's ownership of Twitter makes a great deal of difference. That's what they want you to believe. It's a distraction, it's misdirection, it's a bright, shiny object. But the real manipulation, the real influence, that's elsewhere.